This is the Monster Man, and I just wanted to discuss something today that's been rumbling around in the back of my mind for quite a while, and that's the fact that I think they chose the wrong Black Batman. If you've kept up with comics, you know that Jace Fox took up the mantle as the next Batman, quote unquote, not only stealing the name and the suit, but also the opportunity from the character who actually deserved the mantle, Batwing. In this video, I want to discuss why I think this was the wrong decision, and do a little thought experiment with several ways on how they could have handled this better, because I think criticism isn't useful if you can't present an acceptable alternative. I wanted to wait and give Jace's character some time to flesh out before I made my opinion, and it's been plenty of time. The man has had like 3 runs at this point, almost more than Luke's Batwing, and I still think he's a worse character, so now I think it's fair to air my thoughts. Now let's talk Batwing. Who is he? Specifically, I want to talk about the New 52 run, which for all intents and purposes is the current canon at the time I'm recording, that the Batwing character follows, and it does a lot of legwork in establishing Batwing as a credible character. The first Batwing was David Zavimbe, the hero of the Democratic Republic of the Congo. He and his brother were combat prodigies, recruited to be child soldiers at a young age. After the death of the general that recruited him, he found sanctuary in an orphanage and eventually grew up to become a cop that performed vigilante acts on the side when the law didn't get the job done. He was recruited by Batman when Batman recognized Zavimbe's skills as a vigilante and found that Zavimbe also vowed not to kill, which is in line with Batman's code. Zavimbe went through a lot in his 3.5 volume run. The Congo was familiar but even more twisted than Gotham in some ways. Money ruled everything, much like in Gotham, and nearly every cop was corrupt. While similar to Gotham, the cracks in the system were simply more apparent, less hidden. They're barely even trying to put on a show of justice. The legal system of the DRC isn't even motivated to keep known serial killers behind bars, even when the evidence is damning, and empowers them to keep killing simply because they have the money to get away with it. DRC is a different kind of broken from Gotham. Nothing is hidden in the shadows, the evil is out in the open. Even his first issue begins with an entire police department being slaughtered. At the end of his run, Zavimbe realizes he can't be Batwing. He needs to address the problems of the DRC his own way, not using the mantle of the Bat. And it's heavily implied he is considering using lethal force to improve his city and country, even though he made a vow not to kill in the past. His reality showed him what Batman could never bring himself to understand, that it's not always so easy to not kill. Bring up David, not because I necessarily think he should have been the first Black Batman, because I do think Batman should have more of a tie to Gotham, but because of the potential his story had if it continued. And if we were to get a first Black Batman, I think he would have been an excellent choice. He could have had a hypothetical storyline where he could have revoked the Batmantle with the resolution that he'll kill if necessary, becoming the symbol of fear that the Bat was supposed to represent in the DRC. The term next implies a change in how Batman operates, and what bigger change could there be than becoming a Batman that isn't afraid to kill? But of course, comic fans wouldn't have that. So the second route, I imagine, that it would be way more likely, if they were to continue David Zavimbe's story, is that he would stick to his vow of not killing as close as possible, deciding using his intelligence and intel to find out who actually deserves a killing blow. The real criminals, the one with the money and the political power. After fighting through an army of men without taking even a single life, he comes face to face with a man he's resolved to kill. But he remembers his vow not to kill in the last moment and finds another way. If the prison system won't work, he'll become the prison. With this new resolution, he'll take the Kingpin into his custody, hiding him away in his Batcave, effectively making a man disappear without a trace. That is the fear he wanted to instill in the villains all this time, making the people of the DRC unsure if the people whisked away by the Bat live or die. And now that he's found another way, he takes that resolves and dons the Bat symbol once again. No longer Batwing, but a true symbol of fear, the next Batman. And while I think that could have worked, I think the true first Black Batman should have been the second Batwing, Luke Fox. Unlike the first Batwing, Luke was actively trying to get recruited by Batman ever since he fought alongside Batman in high school to deal with some thugs who were bullying him and his friend. And well, bullying is a light term. They were threatening him with knives and guns. So it was a bit more serious than that. Luke already had training in martial arts before that encounter with Batman, But he doubled down on his MMA training and became extremely proficient in hand-to-hand combat, to the point that he can take out superpowered beings with just his hand-to-hand skills. Similar to Batman, Luke also has a genius-level intellect and graduated college early with 2 degrees. The Fox family is intimately tied with Gotham, and he knows the ins and outs of the city, even discovering the Undercity of Gotham all on his own, sometimes referred to as the Underneath. Batman even said Luke Fox was his first choice for the Batwing mantle. The only reason Batman didn't recruit him sooner was because he feared the fallout between himself and Lucius Fox. Lucius is Luke's father, and the man responsible for designing at least half of Batman's arsenal. If Batman should be based on legacy, Luke has just as much of a claim based on his father's contributions to the Batman persona. And just like his father, Luke is well suited to take up the role because he can design his own gadgets, and he even upgraded his father's initial Batwing suit himself. But let's talk about the Batwing suit, because I think it becomes more egregious to overlook the possibility of making Luke the next Batman when you look at his suit. Some of the trademarks of the Batwing suit are his retractable glider wings, jet-propelled flight, fully bulletproof armor that can even repel machine gun rounds, invisibility tech, which Luke upgraded himself to be even more effective, built-in grappling hook, and a chest light that can reach brightness effective enough to be used as a flashbang. Does any of that sound familiar? Because it should, because over half of these features are trademark features of the Batman Beyond suit. Jet-propelled flight, retractable wings, cloaking tech are the trademark upgrades of the original future Batman, Terry McGinnis. Allowing Batwing to take up the mantle of Batman, even temporarily, could be the missing bridge to the suit Terry eventually dons. It just has such a great narrative fit, in my opinion. But what about Luke makes him a better narrative fit than Jace? That's the real question. And it doesn't take too much legwork to see why. After falling out with his father Lucius, Jace spent years away from Gotham. He has almost no ties to the city, and very few ties even to his family. In that same period, Luke has been fighting for his family and Gotham the entire time. Luke was a Gotham Knight, a Bat Family team run by Batwoman and Batman together. He fought international terrorist organizations with the team and solo when he took on the Marabunta, and he protected his family from those organizations as part of Batman Incorporated. Luke fought to get his family justice when his sister was drugged and became mentally impaired, and successfully brought down the criminal responsible. Jace had no part in any of that. Jace had done essentially nothing for his family, and aside from his mother and his youngest sister, they all pretty much actively disliked him. While that does create some drama and tension and a chance for character growth, those seeds were already present with Luke, whose family seemed to think he abandoned them multiple times, when in reality he was hiding his double life as a mask, which his father actively hates. So we didn't need to bring Jace in for familial conflict. Instead of addressing some of the issues Luke has with his family, the second son storyline that gives us Jace's origin basically doubles down on all of the issues Luke is facing while trying to make Jace the more favored son. And honestly, after rereading it, doesn't hold up that well. Lucius seems way more concerned with Jace and is disregarding Luke, and Luke's mother even seems to be less on his side for not giving Jace a chance. But I think Luke is in the right here, given that the only reason Jace even returned to the family was because Lucius had to track him down. And Luke points out that he has been an ideal son for Lucius, doing well in school and professionally. And yet in this storyline, it seems like Lucius is having a much softer spot for Jace, who hasn't done much of anything to deserve that. And I can accept the idea that they would want to mend their family back together, but the way it's done just paints Luke in a very bad light, in my opinion. And he even strains his relationship with his younger sister when he isn't able to find a cure for his older sister who was drugged by Ratcatcher. One thing that rubs me the wrong way is that Jace stole his bat suit, and that's just a plot point that isn't necessary for Luke, who has earned that mantle, and they already laid the seeds for Luke to want a more traditional bat suit in the early Batwing comics. In some of his first issues where Luke appears, he criticizes his suit for being too dependent on technology to function when he's taken out by an assassin using an EMP. He already identified the shortcomings of the armor and was primed to take up a more traditional bat suit if it was ever needed. Not only that, but while part of Gotham Knights, Luke created a AI based on Bruce Wayne, He did this to help Azrael combat an evil AI in his systems, but if Bruce Wayne could not take up the mantle, which is the premise of Future State, where Jace is introduced, it would make sense that Luke could use a copy of the same AI to take over the mantle of Batman in Bruce's absence, using the AI as a guide for his actions against bigger threats, while also using these conversations with the AI to highlight what makes him unique from Bruce. And I think that would have been a much more interesting route to take the story. But obviously that's not what we got. Instead, we get a backstory that's pretty weak, and I mean really weak. Jace's name of choice really has no origin, and he's had like 30 issues at this point for someone to adequately explain the choice of the name, and there just is no good reason for the name change. The primary reason given is to separate himself from his previous teenage years, which to me seems like he's still running from the mistakes instead of embracing them. Jace was self-absorbed as a teen and indulged in tons of parties and drugs instead of training like Luke. After getting rejected at one of those parties, he's FaceTiming a girl as he drives home, and he hits a man with his car and kills him. It turns out this man was a terrible person who arguably deserved to die, but Jace didn't know that at the time, so it's still not great, and he has a ton of guilt about hitting this man and killing him. And his father Lucius, to protect the reputation of the family and their money, covers up the crime and sends Jace to boarding school. The only reason he's called back home by his father is because this crime has resurfaced and could damage the family because it was never addressed properly to begin with. And even though Jace has to make a statement at the deposition, he really receives no consequences from that, and the story just goes on, brushing it under the rug. At least as far as I've read at the current time. Keep in mind, Jace's story is still ongoing at the time I'm making this video. I think having this issue not be addressed when he was young was a mistake for the character. Jace did not want his dad to bail him out. I think it would have played better if his dad let Jace go to court and he presents this evidence during the court case and let a jury determine a lighter sentence for him. That way, Jace gets to face his guilt and go to jail, and it could have presented the opportunity for an interesting spin on a character taking up the Batman mantle. For example, what if he got his Batman training from other villains in jail, or anti-heroes who were arrested to get his abilities? As it stands, he vaguely got his combat prowess from a boarding school and some training from Katana somewhere down the line, and that's about all that we know about his training, and that he's been doing secret agent stuff since then. Putting him in jail, allowing him to train with villains, could have changed his relationship with criminals to understand crime in a way Batman never could, allowing him to understand that crime is sometimes a matter of circumstance. You know, for example, stealing because you're poor, getting drug charges for a drug that, you know, is becoming legal now. And I'm not saying Batman couldn't understand these concepts. I'm just saying it would be interesting to have the perspective of a character who would experience that firsthand from other criminals while he's in prison. That could have been an empowering story about coming away from jail and continuing to make something of your life. Instead, we have someone who is so self-absorbed that he didn't even try to keep in touch with his family, who were only trying to help him, by the way, coming back after a decade and just hoping everybody would accept him when he missed critical events that Luke had to get them through, like when his family were attacked by terrorists and robbed the same night, or when his sister was poisoned and her boyfriend was murdered. All events Jace had no part in, and he doesn't even experience much remorse for not being there for those events. I think the main reason Jace was introduced is just because it was an old plot point and somebody wanted to flex their Lucius Fox knowledge by remembering he had another son. I do kind of wish if they wanted to bring this character back and they wanted to make him Batman, they could have done it in a way to where the Batgirl series did it, or they were both Batgirl at the same time. I don't see why we couldn't have two Batmen at the same time. Batwing in his own series regularly got misidentified as Batman. It wouldn't have even been a stretch if they just both took up the same moniker. The next Batman comics aren't horrible, and what they've done with Jace isn't the worst thing I've seen, and at this point, there is no changing it. So we have what we have, and I'm going to keep reading the comics because they are interesting. The idea that Jace's little sister is going to become, you know, his version of a Robin is quite nice. I think I just hope that we get more respect for Luke Fox going forward. And hey, maybe even more stories with David Zabimbe. I think that's what I'd really want to see in the future, because Luke and David are great characters who just deserve more time in the limelight. Look, if you watched through the end of this, I want to give a big thank you. I know it's kind of a weird, hypothetical type video, but it's just something that's always interested me and has been on the back of my mind, and I wanted to get off my chest. So if you liked it, leave a like. If not, still, thank you for watching. I hope you have a nice day.